I'm very excited to hand it over to Morgan Taggart from FAIR, Food Access Raises Everyone. She's been a great partner on all things food, but more recently in our Circular Cleveland initiative. And she's gonna tell you a little bit about some of our neighborhood projects. Take it away, Morgan.
Thank you, Kristen. It's really great to be with you all this afternoon. As Kristen mentioned, my name is Morgan Taggart. I'm the director of FAIR, Food Access Raises Everyone, and also here on behalf of Neighborhood Connections. And we've been supporting the Circular Cleveland work through the grant making process, of which you'll hear from some of our grantees today. And I'm really excited to share with you all and have this panel share with you all of the great stuff that's happening at the neighborhood level when it comes to a circular economy. We've also been partnering with CNP on some of the community engagement around Circular Cleveland, as well as the ambassador program. So both Neighbor Connections are FAIR, really happy to be a part of this initiative. And so what we wanted to kind of share with you all today is we're going to start with Divya, who's going to give us kind of an overview of the Circular Cleveland initiative. And then we're going to take a deeper dive with 4 of our grantees and really learn what a circular economy project looks like at the community level. So to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Divya, who is Manager of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency for Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. Divya, it is all yours.
Thank you, Morgan. I want to thank Sustainable Cleveland, the Office of Sustainability, and Morgan Yu for having us on this session. I want to say Cleveland Neighborhood Progress has worked on a few initiatives with the city in the past, and this is our opportunity to work on addressing some of the materials and resources, the waste stream, building on that, this time in partnership with the City of Cleveland and Neighborhood Connections. The goal of our project is advancing health equity and climate in Great Lakes. This is a project funded by Robert Wood Johnson. Morgan, next slide, please. The partners on this project really are City of Cleveland and Neighborhood Connections, and funding provided by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. But our thought partners are the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, who are global thought leaders in circular economy. Next slide, please. Just going to share before we jump into the Circular Cleveland Initiative, what a circular economy means for some people who are here, are probably new on this screen. Circular economy really is a transition from a more linear economy to a more regenerative form, which is moving away from the take, make, waste philosophy to thinking about resources at every stage, from design to the end of, from conception to the end of it, through its life cycle, and making it as valuable as it can be as it flows through the system. And how does that work in Cleveland? How do we envision that it's going to play out in Cleveland? So we'll talk a little bit about the Circular Cleveland initiative itself. For Circular Cleveland, we have a few elements that will help us make that transition. The first one of which is a roadmap that we want to have that will help us make that transition, scanning what's going on in the city, identifying what gaps there are and where we can scale up. The roadmap process, we've hired external partners to help us do this process. We started the process in May, taking it out until January. It's a stakeholder informed process, which means it's very important we learn from where we are. In order for us to do that, we realize one of the starting points is we know we are not starting at at point zero. Several groups in the community have worked for a long time. So through this grant initiative, we were able to create a pathway for another grant process administered by Neighborhood Connections, which is the Circular Cleveland Community Grants that started in May. And we have them going through the course of the project. The residents will have an opportunity to implement their projects. Another component of that is the Circular Cleveland moving on, the next component is the Circular Cleveland Ambassadors. Ambassadors are leaders in their community who have a vision to serve the community and also bring feedback from the community into this process. So we may have a more informed approach to this. this is a learning curve for us as we sort of move forward. We are learning how to take your feedback, integrate this so that it's meaningful and intentional for anybody that participates in this process, in this transition. Another component of this is the composting pilot at the West Side Market. And then lastly, we have economic development in economic incentives for small businesses that want to make a transition to adopting some circular economy principles that will allow us to meet some of the goals of a transition to the circular economy, which are really better health, regenerating the environment, reducing pollution, and in the process of doing all this, creating more jobs. Next slide, please. A quick update for to where we are today. Again, we have, with Neighborhood Connection support, been able to get 14 projects off the ground, or rather help them build further in the things that they have been doing. You'll hear from some of them today. They're distributed across the landscape of Cleveland. They can talk a little bit more. There was the grant making team was a team of 5. 3 of them had who knew what circular economy was in their own spheres of influence and were voting members, and they helped make a decision on what Cleveland communities were asking for. We have hired 9 of 10 Circular Cleveland ambassadors, again, who bring with them their own affinity groups and their networks. They also touch 11 different neighborhoods across Cleveland. We're still in the process of filling one more ambassador position, which got vacant in the last couple of months. Cleveland, through this grant, is also joining the Ellen MacArthur Foundation as a network city, which allows Cleveland to access resources through the network of Ellen MacArthur Foundation, learning from them best practices for industries that will participate in this process, the private sector that will participate in this process, working with our city. What can we learn? What can schools learn? What can, just a thought, leveraging resources through this process. And then lastly, I shared a little bit about our road mapping process, consultants for which we've hired in May. We've had 2 stakeholder engagement series. One was an in-person kickoff in August, followed by 2 separate sessions on Thursday last week, one focusing on the private sector, one focusing on the public sector, to really understand where we are based on the data that our partners have collected and the gap that we have to meet some of our goals. This roadmap will be completed in January, and with a few more stakeholder sessions in between that. There is a quick question there. What do different colors and symbols mean on this map? While we had only 14 Neighborhood Connections grants through this process, as I mentioned, we know that we are not starting from scratch. This represents the various community gardens, some businesses that are already practicing circular practices. There are other youth groups and other entities that have been in the sustainability realm. This is just a shout out to everybody who's been along the way, helping move this forward. Next slide, please. What's coming next in 2022? We will begin to think about how ambassadors, grantees, and the private sector that have been coming together can all, along with entities from the public sector as well, coming together to form a working group to help us transition to a circular economy. But this really is this cannot be done if the roadmap is just a planning phase, right? So this working in the implementation phase, we'll have these economic incentives through the city of Cleveland. They will come out in 2022. Look out for them if you know a group that's looking to scale their operations, has their eye on this kind of an initiative. It's a great opportunity to bring them on board. Next slide, please. And then the next one is the composting as West Side Market. The city of Cleveland, through this grant, will run an RFP run a composting project at the West Side Market to capture all the organic waste and streamline it to productive soils that will be that will have a pipeline for distribution um, through this grant. Next slide, please. With that, I will pass this on to the grantees who are here. Thank you very much, Morgan, and hand it over.
Thank you so much, Divya. Thanks for that overview. It kind of gives us some good context for our next speaker. The first project we're going to highlight today is Joe Jordoneck, who is with the Coit Road Farmers Market. Go ahead, Joe.
Yes. So our project resulted from the City of East Cleveland offering us an abandoned high tunnel. We had wanted to have a high tunnel at the market, so they offered it to us. So we applied for funding to facilitate that process. Next slide, please. The market was formed by a cooperative of farmers in the 1930s and has been operating Saturdays year-round since then, and it became a nonprofit in 2001. Next slide. We have a number of collaborating partners that are involved not only in this project, but other projects to improve food access to East Cleveland and the Collinwood neighborhoods surrounding the market. That's through growing food and people being able to do their own with a community garden. With Food Strong, they have a learning garden at the market site. And they also do a monthly event during the growing season called Caravan, where they bring community partners and education as far as local food. Central State University Extension assists us with the urban farmers on the farming site with advice on that. And they also have a consumer scientist that works on our site. And we are part of their Beginning Farmer program, which is going to start next year, where they'll be training farmers, urban farmers. And then EC Grows Community Garden has been on our site for almost 15 years. Cuyahoga Soil and Water District has been working with us the last 2 years to start a food forest. And then we've also been collaborating with the Urban Green Farmers Cooperative, and they helped us as far as the high tunnel as well. Next slide. So this is just a quick look at the site. Up in the upper right, you'll see the market building. So we have 2 acres on one side of Coit and 2 acres on the other side of Coit Avenue, which is in the center there. So in the upper right is the market building, and that's enclosed for year-round. We have 5,000 square feet enclosed for year-round use. In the lower right, you see that kitchen building. We have a licensed kitchen that a Meals on Wheels program uses, and we use it for events. There are 3 lots that are, so those were lots where homes were taken down, and the market has purchased 2 of them, and the other one is in the East Cleveland Land Bank. So we're using 3 lots to do the food forest. In the upper left is our urban farm area, and that's primarily asphalt services, but part of that has been removed by the sewer district, and we're also positioning the high tunnel in the urban farm area. Below that, you'll see Food Strong's Learning Garden, and then below that is the EC Grows Community Garden. And you note here the market is open year-round Saturdays 8 to 1. Next slide, please. So these are some of the plants that are in the food forest. And, you know, there's a quantity of each, and we're developing, we have signage already that was developed by Hawkins School for the various plants, and we have paths around. Next slide. We also, through our collaboration, did some clearing of the site so that we would have space for the high tunnel and additional areas for urban farming. Next slide. We also got pallets from the food bank and made some raised beds, a couple different designs here. Next slide. This is the high tunnel that was abandoned. Next slide. Another view of it. Next slide. This was our deconstruction. We had about 10 volunteers. We did it in a day, moved everything out of there. Next slide. And this is the site where we're going to put the high tunnel. The city of East Cleveland has been very helpful for us as far as moving soil around. They also came over and removed all the asphalt where we're going to put the high tunnel. And we're in the process now of leveling the site out and adding soil in there. Next slide. And this is our timeline for the balance of the year. We're obtaining estimates to install the ground pipes because those have to be done fairly accurately. We also have some community labor that's been involved in the project that we plan to pay. And then we have some materials to procure to get the ground pipes installed. And then that'll take us through our grant. And then next year, we'll be adding raised beds and raising some money for all the materials because a lot of the components were missing from the high tunnel and we need to add a new cover. And so we're expecting the high tunnel to be available for next year's growing season. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate that great overview of your project and the Coit Road Farmers Market. Up next, we've got Deb Smith with Clean Garbage Recycling. Go ahead, Deb.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we got you. We can hear you.
Okay, I can't. All righty. Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Smith, and I'm going to be telling you about our initiative. I work with Clean Garbage Recycling, and we received a grant that we called Don't Throw That Away. So if you could, Dan, next slide. So who are we? We're Tremont residents. I'm Deb Smith. There's also Dave Freitag and Victor Kaitis. We formed in July of 2020, shortly after we found out that collected recyclables we're going directly to the landfill. We were started as a test of concept to see if recycling efforts could break even or generate a small profit. And our premise is that recycling efforts will be more successful if a clean stream collection model is used. Next slide. When we started looking, of course, we wanted to try to recycle everything, but we could only find a market in this area for aluminum, steel, and tin and paper cardboard. Next, please. So what we started out doing was just collecting cans and aluminum cans and steel cans at the farmers market here in Tremont. We did that every Tuesday from August to October, and people brought us their clean aluminum and steel, and then we took these to a scrap yard for recycling. Next. We also contracted with a local paper recycler, and we put paper retrievers. We actually have 3 of them now at the Annunciation Greek Church here in Tremont so that we can at least recycle the paper and cardboard that's generated from the neighborhood. Next. Once the farmers market closed, we decided to go with a co-op model. We placed locked bins around various locations in Detroit, Shoreway, in the Tremont area. The co-op members are given a code for the bins to access them. And the only reason that the bins are locked is because we don't want people walking by and dropping in garbage. It's a free service, and so people bring us their cans, aluminum cans and steel cans. Next. And then in January of 2021, we added curbside recycling for people who are interested. That's just here in Tremont. We do this for a $10 fee. We collect every other Wednesday. Next. And as we were doing our recycling, our collection, we noticed such a large amount of recyclable scrap that was set out on tree lawns and collected as trash. This included things like fencing, pipe, yard furniture, appliances, grills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All things that are very easily recycled. Next. So we decided to start collecting scrap. Part of our mission is to deconstruct the items, to extract the elements and recyclables which are found inside. There's copper, aluminum, brass, motors, capacitors, etc. And we do this prior to recycling. Next. And oh, that one's really tiny. We purchased a used cargo carrier. I will say everything we buy used, from our bins to whatever it is that we use for the company. We do used products whenever possible. We have a little used cargo carrier that we were using for collection, but we realized we needed a bigger collection vehicle and also tools to use with deconstruction. And then the circular grant RFP came up, which was such a godsend, and we applied, and we were selected as a recipient. And so our initiative is called Don't Throw That Away. Okay, next. So we're going to purchase a truck, and that turned out to be really cost prohibitive. So we ended up getting a used cargo trailer that we used to pick up our scrap and transport it to our scrap yard. And we used tools to assist with the deconstruction. We got the word out through, we went to all the block clubs here in Tremont. They have an Inside Tremont newspaper that comes out monthly. And so we actually have like a column in it practically. And we got the word out that way. We also did some postcards that we distributed throughout the neighborhood with the help of some wonderful volunteers here in Tremont. And we started bi-weekly collection. Next. So whenever possible, we repurpose or donate items that are in good shape. And these are just examples of some things that we collected. For example, this grill is perfectly fine, but someone didn't want it. So we've given that to someone in the neighborhood who is in need. The wastebasket, that little rolling cart. We have lots of items like this. If they look like they're reasonable, we will donate them, Habitat for Humanity, or if there's somebody who needs them. Next. After that, then we deconstruct them. This is a microwave that was deconstructed. And of course, I had to learn how to discharge a capacitor so I didn't get shocked. And these are all part of the learning curve. But anyhow, we deconstruct whenever possible. The only thing we don't deconstruct are air conditioning units because they have the Freon chambers in there and we don't want to puncture those. But we deconstruct because inside a microwave, you've got a capacitor, you've got a motor, you've got copper and brass and lots of stuff that can be recycled. And then next, please. After that, then once the deconstruction is done, then we sort the scrap into their components: iron, steel, aluminum, copper, brass, motors, capacitors. Next. And then we bring the sorted scrap to our partner scrap yard, A&B Metal Recycling. I have to give a shout out to these guys. They've been so good to me and helped me to learn, the ropes and what you do and how you do it. So they've been terrific. Next. So to date, we've had approximately 50 residents provide scrap for recycling. And we also recycle items we happen upon by chance. Like, for example, someone down the street was remodeling a house and there was all this ductwork in a dumpster. So I took it out and was able to recycle that. There's people throw out things like aluminum awnings. And so if we happen upon things, we definitely recycle them. Next. So to date, and this is just in a very short amount of time, this is what we've kept out of the landfill. That turned out super small, so I apologize for that. Gosh, you can hardly even see it. I can hardly see it. But the sheet iron, 879 pounds, the sheet aluminum, 89 pounds, over 1,000 pounds of the clean sheet, fencing, 100 pounds, cast iron, 569, 45 pounds of motors, 8 pounds of copper, 8 pounds of yellow brass, 12 capacitors, and 5 air conditioning units. So far, our dollar amount is $345.97. I do actually have a fair amount of stuff that I have to bring to the scrapyard again. But just to do a comparison with my, for clean garbage, we've collected in 14 months about 2,500 pounds of aluminum, and we've got $950 approximately for that. So the thing is, there's money in scrap. Things like copper can go for up to $3 a pound, and yellow brass $1.80 a pound versus Aluminum, which is maybe 40 cents a pound. That's what it is right now. And steel is 9 cents a pound. Next. So the takeaway from what we've learned so far is that scrap's a valuable commodity that can be easily recycled. Scrap may contain elements that cannot be manufactured. These elements should be captured and recycled. We think it would be beneficial to view scrap as a legitimate commodity and formalize its collection. Provide a dedicated scrap bin, for example, for residents, either curbside or maybe in these supercenter locations that are being planned. We think about during dumpster days that the city has, maybe if there's a separate dumpster for recyclable scrap. And then to allow local scrappers the opportunity to recycle this scrap. It's really, we're not trying to take the place of local scrappers. And I have a lot of respect for these people who are out scrapping. They do a great job. We just think that scrap shouldn't be left to chance. So thank you for being part of the solution, and recycle on. Thanks.
Hey, Deb, before you go, we had a couple quick questions in the chat. I
Okay.
wanted to throw at you.
Okay.
Rachel asked if it's $10 for each pickup. If you could explain kind of that cost or fee structure a little bit.
It's $10 a month for
Okay.
the bi-weekly. Mm-hmm.
And then she also asked, is it your 3 members who physically go out and collect the scrap?
Yes, it is us.
Okay. So you're a scrapper. All right.
I'm a scrapper.
Thank you so much, Deb. We'll bring you back for the Q&A at the end, but great presentation. I learned a lot. So thank you for sharing your project with us.
Thanks.
Up next, we've got Trishelle Robinson with King's Closet. Trishelle, are you there? Can you unmute yourself and turn on that camera?
So unfortunately, Morgan, I cannot turn on my camera. We did try several times to get it connected.
Bummer.
But
Well, you got a great picture up there, so we'll just have to look at the presentation and check you out that way. But your mic is working great, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Alrighty, guys. And so that picture is really what I do look like. I do change my hair quite often, but that is me. What you see is kind of what you get. I am the executive director of our hub and founder of the King's Closet. You can go to the next slide. So as you see here, the King's Closet is a I want to say off-brand, but an off-brand shopping experience for those who are less fortunate. Some of the ladies that you see featured in this picture are part of our homeless community, and they came in to shop with us. The image that you see before you is what we use to get women registered or individuals registered for appointments to come in and to shop with us. If it's outside of our standard service day, which is every 3rd Saturday of the month. It's a 3-part process, and that's register, arrive, and shop. That QWERTY code actually will work, as some people do have smartphones. And then we have a phone number and email that they can reach out to us as well. That is so if there's someone who is being released from a hospital or in a domestic situation and needs to get away quickly, has become displaced by emergency circumstance, and they're in immediate need, then we will make an appointment for them to come down and shop with us. You can go to the next slide. As you can see, this is kind of what our room starts with. So the picture on the left is one of our storage spaces. Our clothes are donated, gently used from individuals across Cuyahoga County and Lake County as well. We do offer pickup services to get those clothes from the individuals that have to donate, and then to get them cleaned and ready to distribute to the people that we serve. One of our goals as a dual service is to reduce the waste of clothing that goes into the trash, but also meet the needs of those who are classified as less fortunate. We do know that federal poverty guidelines may often exclude some people from assistance. We want to make sure that they do not go without as well. So we don't just serve the homeless, but we serve those who are considered less fortunate by our standard. And that means if you don't have and we can help, we do so. We did have a space that was pending for us to actually go in and have a permanent setup, but that fell through. And so what we had to do is prepare a makeshift space where we set up and break down every time that we serve so that everyone can come in and shop. So you do see that we have some tables, but we also have racks, both the elongated and round racks that we hang up items as well. You can go to the next slide. This is myself and a few of the volunteers who serve with me. Our youngest volunteer that has come to help is 7, and she actually is my shoe and purse sorter and organizer because she knows her colors. And this is the way that she feels that she can help her mom by coming to help us. We typically set up our racks and our tables by sexual orientation, meaning male or female, and then also by color. So it's easier to pick through. We do not have people identify their sexual orientation, but it's easier if we say this is the men's section to the right, this is the women's section to the left, and the children's section is in the rear. When we color sort, we typically use the science practice of Roy G. Biv for our dresses and our suits, and then our clothes, our coats, excuse me, are coupled together. And that's what you see behind us. That's our browns, black, grays, and whites behind the young lady with the big hair. And then our coats are to the far right. You can change the slide. This is me again. I am standing in front of one of our children's tables. We actually collect items for everybody, from babies, as in newborns, all the way up to our senior citizens. Like I said, we do make appointments for people to come in. We do go out and pick up items. This is just a part of what we do. We also have small appliances, and we provide food products for those who may be in need. On the third Saturday when we serve, their experience also includes a hot meal, a hygiene pack, and snacks so that when they leave us, they will be complete, if that makes sense. We offer them what is called King's Cash, and it's our way of being able to keep up with everything that happens. So they don't actually physically shop and spending their own cash, but we give them what's called a $50 stipend, and our items are priced between $2 and $10, so that by the time they walk away, they can have a complete outfit, whether it's a jacket, some shoes, a purse, some undergarments, and a top, or however they would choose to mix and match. And then the next month they come back and get another 50, and then the next month another 50. There's no limit to how many times you can come. And we encourage everyone to bring someone, if that makes sense. Once we're done, because I said we don't want to throw away clothes, we then work with a few other organizations such as All God's Children's Resources, the Greater Family Promise, I almost called it Greater Promise, Family Promise Shelter of Greater Cleveland, and then a few other individual organizations that once we're done, we go ahead and take what we have left remaining as we turn over our seasons to them so that maybe they can use them for the individuals that we service. I am trying to make sure that I get to focus on what's in front of us. So then this slide that you see next to my picture is the way that people who would like to donate to our cause with items, they can do it. So we have the Tri-C method, which is clean, call, and celebrate. Clean out your storage, your closets, your attics, or your basements. Call us to schedule a day for you to drop off or for us to pick up, and then celebrate that you're making room to support someone else. So you get room to get new things, but you get to show support for someone else. We've done everything from estate sales and home clean outs for individuals who have passed away, and their family is like, hey, we don't want to throw this stuff away. It's pretty good stuff. We want to get rid of it. We will literally send a team to help them get that stuff out so that it's not going to waste. And like I said, once we're done, we pass it along to the next organization. One of the things, being formerly homeless myself, that breaks my heart is having to rummage through garbage bags to look for clothing. And so we tried to create this opportunity to mock a Salvation Army store or a Goodwill store, or even like a Tiffany's. Like I said, we provide them snacks while they wait so that they have a real shopping experience. It's not looking through someone's trash, if that makes sense. Um, we accept items for zero, like I said, 0 to 99, sizes 0 to 6 months to size 26 in women. And I think the largest men's size we had in pants was, I think, a 56, and the largest shirt was about a 30 in the neck. I think this might be the last slide. I'm not sure if there's one more, Morgan or Kristen. Okay, good. So that's who we are. It's what we do. We've been doing this for about a year and a half. We go all the way to Lake County and Lorain County for those who need service. And we are going to move into a pop-up system next year as well, so that we can include more neighborhoods. We know that our reach is only as far as we will go, and we choose to go everywhere. So we were grateful when we were chosen to be a part of this grant, not only to get the word out about what we do but also to be a greater support to the city of Cleveland and its residents. And that's all I have.
Well, Trishelle, I hope you have a few more minutes because the chat has been blowing up. I'm going to throw some questions your way.
Yes.
One is, what types of items are you most in need of? Is there anything you have too much of or that you don't need more of? How can we donate? Now, you provided some donation information, and I'm wondering if clothing and or if people have funding, what's the best way to kind of connect with you? And then if you're looking for specific types of items, if you could speak to that, that would be great. We had a couple questions about that.
Absolutely. And I do have a few minutes, so it's fine.
Good.
So we do accept monetary donations. They can be sent to us via PayPal or Cash App through our hub, which is our nonprofit. You can see it up in the right, to me, it's my right-hand corner. And that's the way that we're also found on social media. We're on both Facebook and Instagram as Our Hub Inc., where we post announcements about volunteer services or our feedings and things that we do. We currently are working to collect winter coats for all ages, and then we're looking to collect men's clothing and shoes. And we also work with school partnerships. So this is something that we recently started doing. And I actually get calls based on family needs. So we had a family from Marion Sterling that the counselor reached out and specifically gave us a number. So we do what we can with what we can. Men's clothing, winter coats, hats, gloves, and shoes are what we're after currently.
Awesome. Let me scroll back up. It's been hot. I hope you can read this chat once you hop off here. Social media, you shared your handle for that, Our Hub Inc. You can
Yes.
find you on Instagram.
And Facebook.
And Facebook. Thank you. Question, and I think I'm just going to throw it to you just because I think it would be good for people to hear again. For those without a mobile device, I know you popped up that QR code or access to a PC. How do individuals connect with you and your organization?
So it's kind of small here, but if you look down below, the phone number 216-816-0223, that's our actual number, and it will translate to me via email or phone. It is actually connected to my computer and to my telephone. So I am typically the one who usually responds.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I think just a lot of kudos. I think people are really, blown away by the kind of environment that you're creating for people and how inclusive you all are. And just really creating a wonderful, positive shopping experience for the folks that you work with. So thank you so much for your presentation. I think you're going to be getting donations. I think you're going to be getting calls about clothes. So appreciate you, Trishelle, and we'll open it up for Q&A at the end too. So I hope you can stick around.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Up next, we've got Mark Depena with Ben Franklin Community Gardens. Hey, Mark.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yep, you're on.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay, so Ben Franklin Community Garden is the largest community garden in Cuyahoga County. I don't know, do you have a screen of the garden itself? Was that sent to you? There we go. Okay, so if you look at this picture here, the top picture on the left shows the picture of our garden. It's resides on 5 acres of land, and 3 of those acres are tillable acres. The garden has been around pretty much for almost 100 years now. It was attached to the Ben Franklin School, and which in the 1920s, it was a horticultural attachment to the school, but during the 70s, they weren't able to maintain it anymore. And so 40 years ago, Old Brooklyn Community Development Corporation took it over as a community garden. And since then, we've grown it and developed it into a more sustainable garden. Currently, we have about 200 gardeners who garden there. And so for the longest time, it was just kind of tilled and planted and tilled and planted. So a lot of the organic material started to really not be there anymore because there weren't a lot of sustainable practices. About 15 years ago, we developed an operating committee. And with that operating committee, we started to do fundraisers, looks for grants. And somewhere about 10 to 12 years ago, we were able to purchase our first small tractor. And because we were able to purchase that tractor, we were then able to begin to look at some sustainable practices. So the first thing we did after we getting the tractor, we built our compost bins. And if you look at that second picture there to the right, you can see we built 6 large compost bins. And so what we started to do was collect some of the organic matter and some of the leaves and put them into those bins and compost them. But over the years, then we started to again, thinking more sustainably, we also build 6 holding bins. And if you look at that center one on the bottom there, on the right-hand side of the holding bins. So every year we collect hundreds of pounds of leaves. We collect anything in the garden that's green that a lot of the gardeners, like if they're weeding and things like that, they'll put them into those green bins. And now we're taking it a step farther, and we're working with Old Brooklyn Recycles. And we have set up now a compost, or not a compost, a garbage bin, as you can see in the lower right corner there. So people can drive up next to the garden, put in their food scraps, and we take those and recycle those too. We also have an arrangement with Metropolitan Coffee to get their coffee grounds. And we do have a gentleman from one of the Starbucks who brings that coffee in, and we've been trying to kind of extend that to other areas in the community so that we can begin to process more and more of those scraps. So with the funds that we received through Circular Cleveland, and a grant that we got through Starbucks and money that we raised through our own fundraisers, we are going to be purchasing this year a compost spreader. I don't have a picture of it because we haven't gotten it yet. We're supposed to get that in about a week or so. And what that does, it looks kind of like a large cargo trailer with sides. And in the back, it has these rotating tines on the back. And so as you load it with compost and on the tractor, and then the compost then gets kind of scrambled up, and then we can put it out into the garden. So before, what we had to do is get a scoop of compost, put it on the tractor, take it out to the garden, roll it out, as best we could. This way, we'll be able to spread it throughout the whole garden evenly, and we'll be able to continue to use as much organic matter as possible. So that's pretty much it. But I mean, our whole goal has been to be more and more sustainable. And particularly over the last 5 years, I think we've reached that goal pretty well, and we've come up with a reasonably good system. And again, working with Old Brooklyn Recycles, we've added it to another level at this point.
Thank you so much, Mark. I think what I'd like to do now is I'd like to have our whole panels, Divya, Mark, Trishelle, Deb, and Joe. Can you guys all turn your camera and sound on? We can take some questions in the chat. I'll stop sharing my screen here. And yeah, people have questions for any of our presenters today. I encourage you to pop them in here. I, of course, have one I'd love to ask you all. And it's really around, I think, some of the learnings that you've been doing as you've been, and some of you had these projects going, and the money from Circular Cleveland and Neighbor Connections was able to help you take it to the next level. But I'm wondering if someone was doing a similar project, what advice would you give somebody who wanted to kind of start a similar thing in their community? And who wants to go first? I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but
I'll go first, Morgan.
perfect. Thank you, Trishelle. Go for it.
And the only reason why I'll go first is because this is actually what's happening. So I had a young lady contact me from Virginia who saw what we were doing, and she wanted to duplicate the work there in the same fashion. And so I shared with her how we started and what we do, but then I also took some of what we had to send it to her so that she could build up what she's doing. And so I think to the person who wants to start, it's the only thing you can do is get started. Start scared.
Ooh, tell us more about that. What do you mean start scared?
Starting something new can be really, really hard to do. There's all kinds of fears of rejection and failure, and there's just a lot that goes with starting new. And I'm actually a newbie to the nonprofit sector. Most people don't know that. I actually was in a meeting yesterday, and the young lady who I was with said, "I thought this was your job." And I'm like, "No, I actually work a 9 to 5. I do nonprofit work after hours."
Wow. Oh my gosh.
But what I had to do was I had to start afraid. I didn't know who to talk to. And I'm so grateful for Neighbor Up, because I stumbled into a Neighbor Up session, and this is how I got started. But I started with the fear of this may not work, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to lean on people and learn the language of the rooms that I choose to be a part of and start the conversations. And that's the way to start. Start scared. And if you stutter, if you stammer, if you have to retreat for a minute to catch your breath, just start. You wouldn't believe how many people will invest in your fear and helping you overcome that. I had some people who wanted to help me simply to erase my fear of failing.
Wow, that's deep, Trishelle. Thank you for that. And I think that could apply to any of these projects, really, is, yeah, stepping into the unknown, right? And being willing to take some risks when you believe
Yes.
in kind of the need that you've identified and what you're hearing from community, and just going for it. And people will find you along the way to support you.
Yes.
Great advice. Great advice. Yes. Wise words, as was said in the chat. Deb, Joe, Mark, any advice you might have for people doing these types of projects?
Well, from my standpoint, the important thing is to have a group of people that, you know, are getting on the same page, and especially if it's a diverse group. In other words, that kind of represent all the stakeholders associated with the project. And I think once you get that going, then you you know, kind of build that momentum, and I think that's critical.
Good. Really building, diverse teams to help you take that forward.
Right. And especially if you're like, if you set up a rhythm of meeting regularly, which we did, and that was a big help.
Good advice. Deb, Mark?
Go ahead, Deb.
For me, it was just having patience. Then you're kind of lighting a fire. It takes a minute for things to light. And so just kind of having patience there. And also, I didn't know how to deconstruct a microwave. So some of it was just being easy on yourself and learning and knowing that, gosh, next time I do this, it's going to get easier. And that helped me.
Good.
And
Yeah.
I think that having a vision and a plan, but also kind of starting at a reasonable place. So we kind of, start out kind of small, do what you know that you're capable of doing. You're going to experiment. You're going to have some failures along the way, but you're going to learn through the process of what works best, how to draw people in. And then eventually, as you get a better idea of what you're doing, then you can begin to expand. And it's really helped us with in our garden having the committee, because then you have more stakeholders and you have a very consistent plan as you're moving along.
Thank you, Mark. We have a question in the chat that I'm going to start with you, Divya, around what types of policy or legislation at the city level do we need to advance all of these to really scale up?
That was a tough one.
I know. I thought about that as I was reading it to you. I was like, oh, I'm glad I'm not receiving this question. But yeah, what do you, in terms of what you've been learning through both the grantees, the ambassadors, and the road mapping process, what kinds of policies are bubbling up for you that might really support this type of work and expand it?
I definitely do think people need to, I know this sounds like a broken record in spaces that I'm in Zoom squares on, but until we get data out so people can connect with each other on that, creating some sort of, and sort of looking at data not just as numbers, but as anecdotal collection of stories so we can actually build on them. So in terms of what policy and legislation, I just think that we need to start hearing what the community is talking about and really learning how to capture that into at the back end. I'll share a small example of what's going on is that if we are to scale up on, let's say we want to do an X item to have a market, we need to have scale around that. In order to get scale around that, we need to capture something. We need to, and we can only capture that if we are intentional about it. So we have to have a policy around it. If you want to capture glass, then we need to say, I am going to ban glass from going into the stream. I am going to have to force a market to happen. If that is the same thing about any material resource, we need to be proactive about putting some of these policies ahead so we can force some markets to really rethink, innovate, and redesign themselves. And I think we need to take some risks around that. And I think that's in the forefront. That will allow us that, and sort of data supports us on building a case for something like that. That's one thing that comes off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I just want to call out something Dan Brown put in the chat, pay as you throw too. And I used to live in Grand Rapids and we had to pay for a trash tag for every bag I put on the curb, which really makes you think about what you're putting out there. So I think that's another interesting policy for us to look at. I don't know if anyone on the panel wants to add to that in terms of if you've thought about the policy side. Or Kristen's got a question here around how you could see your work scaling up so that more residents could be served by the projects that you're doing. And so thinking about scale, whether it's policy or other resources or support you might need to grow what you all are doing in our communities. Anyone can start.
I know for myself,
Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
I would really like to see, as I said, I feel like it's a crime to throw this stuff in the landfill. And that I think that would be a policy decision to have. Again, I don't think, I mean, we're having a hard time with picking up our recyclables. So I would love to see curbside, but at least a space where people can bring their scrap, or somehow at least even acknowledge that scrap is a valuable commodity, a legitimate valuable commodity, or even in these super centers have a space for scrap, and then identify people that can take it and make money from it, make a living from it. That's what I would like to see for that.
So to piggyback off of what Deb said and back to Divya's her previous comment, I agree. I think that's part of the conversations that need to be had regarding how the policies are written. They need to be more inclusive of the residents of the community, not the city or the area at large. Because I think where there are skill barriers, for lack of a better word, for our residents, if we had these implementations like identifying those who can haul scrap and use the money as a way to pay their bills, that would alleviate even some of our governmental assistant groups, because they have a way to get income or they may not need as much. And you give them not only a skill to acquire, but a way to take care of their community. And that goes not just from scrapping, but even from their clothing. Some people love to hold yard sales. And if you could just take all of your stuff from your block to Jenny's house and Jenny sets up a yard sale, it recycles funds back into the community that can help do the work that the city claim under budget or policy that they cannot.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a really,
that's-
really great point. And really grounding it in community, because I think sometimes when we take on these initiatives, they get kind of, I don't want to trapped, for lack of a better word, in businesses and organizations. But Trishelle, what I hear you saying is there needs to be an intentionality to really ground this in economic opportunities, skill building, and opportunities for our community residents in the city to participate and to benefit.
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate you lifting that up. Anyone else on scaling? Mark or Joe, what that might look like for you all?
Well, I like this idea of saying, you have people that know everybody, that can do different things. And if there was a way that people could tap into that, some kind of network, as was mentioned, I think by Trishelle, that, people that are good at selling things, and if you could find a way to tap into that easily, and instead of, relying on your perhaps limited knowledge that you have, but
Mhm.
some kind of a way to network it.
Yeah, no, that's a great, and like identifying people's skills and assets and gifts and talents, as we say, neighborhood connections, and providing opportunities for them to really use those.
Yeah, and in fact, that actually occurs in the neighbor up meetings when we used to have those.
Yep.
The live ones.
Absolutely.
And I think we're trying to add more educational pieces at the garden, because we've built our pavilion, and things such as composting sometimes sound like they're really difficult, but they're really not all tremendously difficult. I have compost bins like in my backyard, and I cut my grass, and I use my leaves, and I use my scraps. And in fact, anytime I go to the market and I see that thing sitting in the fridge, I'm like, okay, well, that's not bad, because now I can put it in my compost bin and it's going to come back to me in a good form. So I think teaching some of those skills down the road, as we do better with it, to the community, I think is also hopefully going to be helpful.
Thank you, Mark. I see we're at time. So I wanted just to open up if anyone has any final comments for anybody or anything else that they want to share before we close out. Yeah. Go ahead.
I would like to make a final comment that as long as we have this soapbox, and that is that my goal, my hope is that recycling is not considered some sort of an extracurricular activity done by tree huggers and do-gooders, that it is looked at as an essential part of life on this earth, and that we fund it accordingly and respect it like that. So that's...
Well, I would like to say, even if you don't send your clothes to the King's Closet and you give them to a different organization, remember that they're going to people who may be in a broken or low space. If it's your trash, then please pass. If you won't wear it, please don't share it.
Ooh,
That's good.
someone putting this in the chat. I like both of those. That's great. Yeah.
I think sometimes people forget that the people that they're sending their donations to may be in places of low self-esteem and self-worth. And when you give them things that you wouldn't dress yourself in, and I'm not saying give them your new stuff with tags on it, but if it's all spotted and if it has holes in it, don't give them that. We're trying to build better people and better communities.
Yeah. Mhm. Awesome.
Oh, well, yeah, Divya, go for it.
I just want to say, keep sharing your stories as in as many places as you can, because that's impactful. That really, like Trishelle mentioned, that it really spurs that mushroom of growth, the network of people who connect along different areas. So this was really inspiring to hear from everybody. So just keep sharing your story.
I
Yeah.
just want to say, we're stewards of this land. And, for so long, we've just taken and taken and taken. And I think it's time to really be respectful and to give back and to do whatever we can to renew and sustain. And it's all something that we're capable of doing.
That's great, Mark. That's great.
Mhm.
Well, I just wanted to thank you all. I think this says to me, and this is something we talked about when this initiative was first starting with our partners at the City of Cleveland and at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. Circular Cleveland might be a new name for you, but so many people in our community are doing circular economy concepts and putting them into practice and keeping things out of the waste stream and working upstream to prevent those materials from getting there in the first place. And so I'm really glad we had this opportunity to highlight some of the awesome community projects that are happening in Cleveland and East Cleveland. And this is really just a taste of 14 total projects that we've been able to fund this round. So if this got you thinking, as Divya mentioned, there will be another round of grant opportunities being put out there next year. And we really encourage more folks to kind of engage with us as we move forward with Circular Cleveland. Special thanks to everyone on the panel. I loved hearing all of your stories and your advice and the experience that you all have had. Thank you, Divya. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Morgan.